Yes. Mm.
All right. Hey, this is so great to connect with you today. We are diving in with Samantha Lotus. And Sam, I'm so drawn to everything that you do because you use that phrase that I love, godification. So I just want to dive in. Let's talk all things godification. What does that even mean for you? And let's play. Let's see where we end up today.
Yeah, and it is so good to be here with you. And for everyone listening, you can probably hear just the joy in our voices already, because you know, when I tune into you, that's exactly what I pick up is joy and bliss and pleasure and fun. And when I was tuning into myself, my own blueprint around what is it that I really want to say to the world? What is it that I really want to stand for? What do I bring forth? The only thing that felt appropriate was the word that came through me of godification. And my ego said, well, Sam, that sounds a little pretentious, you know, but then my soul said, but that's what it is. It's not just alchemy. It's not just reality hacking. It's really, we are the embodiment of source consciousness. And so what is that process of us, you know, these souls, these human bodies with all these programs, becoming ourselves, becoming God? Okay, well, yeah, it's the process of godification, which is the truest, most powerful embodiment of what and who we really are.
Yeah. So, yeah. I got goosebumps. I just love that. I love playing with words anyway, and that just takes it to a whole other level. So let's make it real for each of us for a second. Like, what does godification look and feel like for you? I'm tuning into like, what does that look like for me? And I'll share one anecdote that comes to mind, and then we'll play ping pong here. So at the beginning of this year, among many things, I have been wanting to do more writing, and there's a lot of writing wanting to come through, books to be written. And like, I've always been a writer, but there was a way in which my writing, like my voice was not how I knew it should be in my body when I write. I know how it feels when it's totally aligned. And sometimes I would nail it, sometimes not. That's okay. But what came through was a project for myself without sharing it to the world, no pressure, no platform, just for me to play in this space. And I called it 365 days of writing myself into my divinity. And so every day for 365 days, I'm now on 200 something. I've been writing and just opening up this space in a really specific way to allow godification to happen, right? And to the whole spectrum of what that looks like. Some days it's more really deep channeling. Some days it's more working through the bumpiness of the human experience, like, here's some cleanup. But that's the whole point, is it's the whole spectrum. So that's kind of an ongoing thread for me when I heard that word. There's many things underway, but that's one that comes to mind. How about you?
Oh, I love that. I'm so excited to hear more about your writing, because I know we've talked about that a little bit, and I know it's just for you, but I'd like for it to be for me and everyone else too. So
it's coming. It totally is. Yes.
Good. Yeah. For me, you know, I went through a lot in my life, a lot of trauma and a lot of health issues and mental issues and physical issues and relationship, just a lot of struggle. And as I was on my healing journey and this awakening and, you know, moving into naturopathy and graduating with psychology and moving into natural medicine and coaching, I started to really see that all illness and disease is really separation from our true self.
That's right.
And disconnection from self, which is disconnection from source. And so I said, well, what is the antidote to all of this disease? And it came through me that, well, the antidote is created within our own DNA through sourcing it from source and pulling it into our DNA and allowing it to spread throughout our bodies and then emanate through to the world. And so I thought, okay, well, if the antidote is within me, where is that created from? And it's created from source. Okay. And if I am actually just source consciousness experiencing itself, it feels like there's a process for me to go from this human that is struggling and disconnected in all these ways to my original blueprint of bliss and harmony and joy and abundance and pure essence. And so that this process for me of continuously becoming who I really am by letting go who I am not, that for me is this process of godification. And it's the foundation of my personal practices, and then the practices that I share with my friends, my family, my partner, my clients. And it's the greatest question anchoring me back. Anytime I'm going through something tough, I ask myself, okay, Sam, if you are God, experiencing God through your vessel, what do you choose and who do you get to become and how do you get to feel? What do you want now? Like, what does that mean for you now? Yeah. It's a game changer for me. Yeah.
Oh, hugely. And as you're speaking, I'm just kind of scanning my own experience and thinking of all the different ways that shows up for me through a huge variety of practices. And so I know the word embodiment is kind of a buzzword these days, but there is a way of bringing in the frequency, the mindset, the perspectives of our God self into the human body. And so, for example, one thing that came to mind as you were speaking was last year when everything fell apart and COVID became a thing that was suddenly dominating the world landscape. Instantly, my immediate instinct was to get out in nature, sit on a rock, and attune my body to the Schumann resonance, because the energetic frequency of Earth is the frequency of the whole. And typically, when we look at energetics, we live in such a way that we are vibrating at very different frequencies from the Earth. And so we perpetuate that illusion of separation just in how we operate. And so for me, that's not a new practice. I need to spend a lot of time sitting on the Earth, laying down on the Earth, grounding on the Earth, because for me, it's very much a deliberate attunement of my body with the resonant frequency of the planet, right? But then there's other ways that are, like you said, thinking about a situation differently or breathing differently, inviting breath and light and life force into the body in different ways. And certainly when you're sick, that feels hard or impossible, right? And so, I'm just thinking of all the times I've sat in my bathtub with a steaming bath going, okay, I'm bringing in the light into my cells and healing myself, because that's what we're designed to do. So many things sparked. Give me some examples of what it's been like for you in really specific ways as you've played with this.
Yeah, well, there's everything you just said. I could go off on all the tangents, and there are two things that I want to share. Is, when we take a microscope and we look at what the human body is, okay, we break it apart. There, there are organs and there are cells and there are tissues and da da da. But when you really look at what's in a cell, okay, well, there's a lot in a cell. You got your mitochondria and you have all your different parts and you have this and that. You look further. There's nothing. We're just made out of energy. Everything is all just energy. And if we're all just pure energy, we get to think of it as, well, there's a whole bunch of kinks that kind of like, we pick up these thorns and these kinks and these blockages and this like congestion, and it junks up the channel. Yeah. It's like your pipes, if your sink, you have a clog, well, it's because it's all junked up, or there's limestone or there's hair in it. And the continual process is cleaning out, removing, letting go, releasing, so that we can come back to the harmonics, the balance, the natural state of being. And what you said of going into nature and, attuning to the Schumann resonance and attuning to earth frequency and putting your bum or putting your feet on the ground and allowing the negative ions to move through you and the positive ions to be pulled back down to the earth.
That's right.
This is so important. And humans, we have forgotten, or we have been mistaught, that we are just these things on the earth, but we are actually of the earth.
Yes.
And the more that we spend time off of the earth, like through living on floors and cement boxes on concrete, and, we come out of tune. But we are like an instrument. We're like a guitar. We do need to be tuned daily. And so getting into nature or having a bath and using Epsom salts or essential oils or working with breath, doing energy medicine, even working with programs that are coming in and releasing programs specifically, these are the practices that are so important. And for me, the way that shows up is I am so sensitive that it can be very debilitating. I'm sensitive to sounds and lights and foods and thoughts and people, and I'm sensitive to everything, and my body just feels it. It all comes in. Yeah. And if I don't work with this intentionally, it gets stuck in my digestive system, and I bloat and I can't digest, and I have all these IBS symptoms or just pain in my stomach. And it really is showing me that I have not been taking care of cleaning the internal pipe system. And so for that, it's like returning to the earth, doing meditation, working with the breath, using oils or herbs, using the right foods, using the right thoughts, and having practices, whether it be crying or releasing in some kind of way, to reset my body to its natural balance and its natural rhythms.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for me. That would probably be the biggest one, is working with this digestive process of recognizing that I take in everything. And that's a lot for this human flesh to handle.
It is. And I love that you brought that in, because in a way, we all are that, but there's a spectrum of sensitivity and conscious awakening to it that dictates our experience. And you are very conscious and very aware and very attuned to what's happening in your body. But all of us have this potential capacity. I call it metabolizing the density, because every day we have to metabolize the darkness, the density, the shadow, the crap that's out there, that's in us. And if we're not engaged in these hygiene practices, clearing practices, expansion practices, we are clogged up, and then it builds up and over time manifests as a physical or a mental discord and an experience that we hate it. And we're trying to figure out, well, how do I get rid of it without going, well, let's start with cleaning the pipes, right?
Yes.
But so you're, what we're talking about is a fundamental shift in how humanity understands itself. And I'll make it more specific. Humanity is so broad, but how each of us understands who we are. And there's a fundamental identity shift that you and I take for granted because we've been working on ourselves, working in this space for however many years. Other people are earlier in this identity of like, wait a minute, I'm more than a skin suit on a earth that is separate. Like what? So what would you say has been a couple of your experiences that really helped you shift your identity and get it? I am Godification in process. Ka-chunk. Whoa. Like, was it mystical experiences? Was it health crises? Like what were some catalysts for you?
Yeah, there were a few. And I think the first one was when I was 15, my mom got diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And she was so scared and overwhelmed that she had asked me to go to her oncologist with her and take notes because it was so overwhelming. And I was there and I could feel the oncologist's energy was so dark and so dense and so heavy. And he was extremely rude, extremely mean, and he pressured her. And there's no other way. You have to get the chemo, take the radiation. We're cutting out your thyroid next week or you will die and your blood will be on my hands. And it was this really intense, like just ickiness. And I remember watching my mom have her organs removed and go take the chemo and take the radiation and be so sick. And things clicked for me. Like this is not normal. Something just said, like, big red flag. This is not normal. And then I went through very similar things. I went through a huge health crisis, and I had an experience where I kind of had a near-death experience. And at the time I didn't know what was happening, but now I have the words to say that I met my higher self. I heard, my own voice coming from outside of me, speaking to me, saying, Sam, you created this. Like almost on my deathbed, waiting for the ambulance, being like, well, you asked for this, you created this. So what do you want? Do you want to die or do you want to live? Like the choice is yours, but you cannot continue living the way you're living because it's going to lead you right back here. So you are going to make radical changes. And I had my higher self shake me awake, scream at me in the face. And that was a huge, huge wake up call. And then subsequent ones would be probably working with psychedelics, having a sacred practice around working with psilocybin mushrooms, and then sitting with DMT and ayahuasca. Profound shifts and awakenings beyond what I had ever even imagined possible, even being quite awoken to the metaphysical and the source consciousness. So those would be the major ones in my life, I would say.
Well, it raises a question. I haven't ever formally looked at this, and it doesn't have to be a trend or a pattern, but I'm wondering if there are some universal stage transitions that maybe many of us or all of us go through. I don't know, but what you named was an end of life as you knew it, and there was a crossroads. Not everybody has it intensely, like waiting for an ambulance, but my version was more relational. My health was fine, but my relationship was that same thing, like boom, this is the end. I'm not even going to go into it, but nonetheless, there's that shock to the system that jolts you out of something. And then there's the altered states of consciousness that open up awareness and perception to a different way of seeing and sensing. And I think everyone has their own spectrum of where they've encountered both or either of those. I'm wondering, with the people that you've worked with, do you notice any patterns like that? Or I haven't ever really looked at it that way. Yeah,
I definitely have. And I believe that we all humans, we're all souls. I believe that we came to Earth for a specific, purpose, the soul's purpose or the soul's mission. And it's all a little bit different. We're all very different. But this is soul school. And I believe that we're meant to be awoken. And what that means to me is aware of the connection to our soul or to source consciousness and to what we're meant to do here on the planet. And often we allow ourselves to get misled or led astray or stuck in the distractions or the denial or the numbing and avoiding what we're really here to do. And our higher self kind of smacks us in the face a little bit to shake and wake us, say, hey, hey, there's something more for you here. Wake up, and that often, unfortunately, for some of us, it comes as at first it's a little whisper, it's a little nag inside, but we kind of distract ourselves, numb it down, and then it comes as like a shouting. And normally that will be in the form of a relationship or a loss of a job or a physical health thing, and then we'll deny that and distract from that, and then it kind of has to hit us like a ton of bricks. And then that is this epiphany moment that we talk about, where we're awakened by our soul and we have that connection. And that moment, unfortunately, often comes from pain, because pain is one of the greatest ways, especially when we're laying in bed. And that's often what pain will do, is it will knock you off your feet and lay in bed where all you can do is be confronted with what you have not dealt with and what you are meant to do. And I see this all the time, like, and what I'm seeing right now with what's happening on the global scale is the earth, we can see it with the earthquakes and with the fires and the floods and the volcanic action. Right now the earth is screaming. And with the whole virus, Corona, that I really believe it's just a reflection. It's here for our greatest joy, to shake and awaken us to what our true potential is, and to show us where we've been living in the illusion and in the fear and the separation. And I feel like this global trauma that's happening is what is catalyzing this great awakening. Yeah. And so I see how that happens. That's happening reflected on the outside and on the inside, on the macro and in the micro.
Yeah, it totally is. I'm with you completely. So with that, what's most alive for you today? Like in your creative process, you're being guided to create. I don't even know what, but I want to hear. And let's just riff on how we're each being guided to create something new with our own life force in our own process of godification. I mentioned my writing is a piece that's coming through. There's more I'll share, but what else is coming through for you?
It's a little funny that I'm going to say this while on the computer, but Much less technology. much less technology.
And that's all for today. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
I'm out.
We got to get out on rocks in the earth. Yes, yeah, I'm with you, Sam. Totally. Yes.
Human reminding and reconnecting to the natural essence of being. That's what it is. All of this transhumanism, all of this tech, all of this AI, all of this rocket ship to Mars, colonizing other planets, microchipping, schmaccination, all of it is anti-human. All of it is anti-nature. And I am really being called to take a stand for Mother Nature, for the earth, for humanity, to remind us what it actually means and feels like and looks like to be a healthy human aligned with nature, and then rejoice in what that will create. Right? Like, we don't need to be sick. We don't need to suffer. We don't need to be in scarcity. We don't need to be sick, stressed, diseased, depressed, disconnected. And when we return to our natural essence and the Godification process, like, what's on the other side of this is pure bliss and unification and abundance and joy and play. And that's what lights me up. And so that's what I'm taking a stand for. And that's coming through me so powerfully, is to build that world and that vision that I know is not just possible or probable, but inevitable when we really choose it.
Yeah, no, exactly. What is bringing you the most joy just for yourself these days? Where are you finding yourself lit up and enlivened in juicy spaces?
The first thing that came to mind was matcha lattes.
Yeah, right.
Just this for me, my morning ritual and the sacred practice of waking up and stretching, moving my body, like crafting my organic matcha with my little whisk and getting my homemade oat milk and putting the intention into it and using my oils and just having this sacred practice where I am creating art through food and beverages, and then, taking it in and connecting to all of it, and really just playing with the sensory pleasures of taking care of myself.
That's right. Yeah. I love that you brought that in, because that's critical, non-negotiable for me too. And coming back to what you just said a minute ago about illness and pain and how it takes us out often, and all we can do is lay in bed and contemplate our existence and like, well, now what? But it's either pain can get us there, or Godification, illumination of our path, can take us there. But either way, it points to the slowing down of how we operate to take in the full sacredness of the moment and create space. I feel it as creating space in my being, in my body, in my cells, in my energy, in my emotions. Everything has to start from spaciousness. And that's a constant practice in the world that we live in, to carve out the boundaries and the priorities and the schedule so that it's space. So for me, it's several hours each morning of being just in this space of being. And that's been there for years. It's non-negotiable. It's so rare that would ever not happen. But if I would just jump in and start the day, I'm missing the critical plugging into source, opening up the field. I guess there are ways I'm sure I could do it differently if I needed to, but that is just part of my ritual too, is sacredness, spaciousness, tuning in, plugging in, clearing out, opening up the day, knowing I'm a vessel, prepare the vessel, and then moving into the day. And it's part of the slowing down that's not honored by the society we've created for ourselves. But that's why sickness, pain, illness, as you were saying, is trying to get us to that point of slow down, be present, really rest and be still. What's your experience of that?
Yeah, I could not agree more. And today was such a good example of the exact opposite. I woke up with a little bit of a tummy ache because I didn't go to bed. I had a poor go to bed ritual last night. And then the first thing, as I woke up, my partner was on his phone and told me all of the terrible news that's happening. And then I picked up my phone and then checked my email. And there was an email that I didn't want to receive with bad news. And then I was all stressed. And then I got on my computer before even drinking water. And I was, and then it just, I tried to get myself back on, but it just set an icky energy precedent. And then the whole day was a little wobbly and a little wonky. And I broke my nail right at the quick, and it was painful, and this and that. And everything was a little off. And I was aware of it and working to get back into the vortex, and it just wasn't happening. And so, it was so clear to me just how the domino effect of the energetics of the first few hours, because that really does lay like a template into your day, and it does sets your mind and your neurochemicals and your chemistry for the rest of the day. And so it was a great reminder on how not to do it.
That's right. Yeah. And if we have enough of those, eventually we get it, That was my experience.
But this is the thing. The thing with this is, I work with so many people, especially high-level entrepreneurs who are amazing, and yet this is how they live every day. And a lot of people do. And they're so stressed. Yes, they have an amazing business and making lots of money, doing great things, but they're so stressed. Their hair's falling out. They literally can't go to the bathroom without being on social. Their relationships are rocky. Their health is going. And if we were to just shift the 1 hour upon waking and just work with that, once they get that, everything in their lives change. And we see that 95% of the population has a really poor morning hygiene. Yeah, and if anyone listening just takes this one thing and optimize your morning, you will change your life. Absolutely.
It's true. Yeah. And the other thing that often I hear people getting tripped up on, well, two things around a morning routine and making that a hard thing. Like, what is my routine? And to that, I would say, I don't have a routine specifically that's like A, B, C, D. Yeah. I just have a tone of beingness, period, that's non-negotiable. And what I do is completely different every day, but it always is the tone of, I'm a vessel, act like one, clean up the vessel, right? And the what I would name as the upregulated cortisol that is the epidemic of society creates a feeling or a perception that there's something at stake. If you sit and just be for an hour, I've had earlier on when I was working with clients earlier in their stage of awakening, that would be like a death sentence. Like you couldn't possibly prescribe anything more difficult or painful than to sit still for 10 minutes. They're like, I would crawl out of my skin. I can't do that. And so I don't typically work with people in that stage because it's just so contracted. Typically the people who find me are way further along in managing their energy in a skillful way. But that phenomenon is an epidemic. It's an addiction. It's a habituated energetic pattern in the system. And certainly I used to be that way myself. It's been years and years, but what do you see that helps people break through that panic of sitting still? Like they can't because it's so terrifying. Like all the balls will drop and I'm lazy. I must not be doing enough. Like all the garbage that comes up. What do you see?
Actually, I'd love to ask you that. What would you recommend for people who are really still there, or maybe like coming out of that, but it's still very challenging? What do you find has been the most useful way to bridge that energetics with the new, more spaciousness energetic?
No, it's such a good question. There's a variety of angles and approaches, but one tool that's very practical and tends to land for people who are in that mindset of, I need data, I need data, right? Is the Muse meditation headset or the headband. Do you know that one? So it's a headband. There's an app and it's biofeedback. And so you can do 3-minute meditations, 2-minute meditations, 1-minute meditations, and immediately get feedback on your app that shows you the state of your system. And I know there's other biofeedback tools as well, but that starts to connect the dots between, oh, here's my experience of how I operate, and here's what's happening then in my brain. And then there has to be the re-education, reorienting the intellect to really understand the cost of that. But honestly, for me, it comes back to those altered states, whether it's mystical experiences. I work in the space of naturally induced altered states through laughter and play more than I do with substances. But either way, an altered state I'm wondering if it's required. I kind of have a hypothesis that it's required to jolt a person out of the hamster wheel into here I got a glimpse of what else is possible. Because otherwise, if you don't know what's possible, it's just like, fuck, another to-do thing on my list. I'm busy. And we never get off the hamster wheel. So it's a combination of working with the perspective and the intellect, but also mystical states, altered states somehow have to be there in my hypothesis.
Yeah, the way that I see this is most of us are always in fight or flight. Right. And people think, oh, fight or flight. Well, right now I'm not in fight or flight. I'm just really busy getting my morning. But that is fight or flight. When you're and running all over, that's fight or flight. And so what I feel like you're calling an altered state is actually like, where the nervous system is calm, exactly. where we're at peace and there's space and we're in the surrender, we're in the expansion. And the order of operation that I see it is, first, people need the awareness of what it's doing to their bodies and to their lives when they are not creating that space or not coming into their parasympathetic, rest and digest nervous system. I like to teach people that your body cannot heal, and it cannot properly digest, and it cannot properly create neurochemicals, and it cannot properly detox while you're in fight or flight. So you're literally you're always either getting medicine poured into you or getting toxins poured into you, and you're never allowing yourself to drip medicine through you. And so having that education piece where awareness, so the brain gets it, then they're like, oh, okay. And then the second piece that I feel like people often miss before trying to switch behavior is there's an identity piece. And I like to play with the visualizing and moving into the timeline of the identity, where you're not just a busy, crazy person who now meditates, but you're a person that is creating stillness. You're a person that prioritizes health. You're a person that nourishes yourself. And it's like shifting how you see yourself and how you identify. And then from that place, well, the behavior is easy because the behavior matches this new identity. And so working on that identity and then starting slow with, and almost gamifying it. So either using Muse or using Insight Timer or Headspace, and setting little, the first few days, we're going to do 3 minutes for a week. And then we're going to do 5 minutes, and then 7, and then 10, and rewarding yourself at the end of the week. What is your reward that you get for, having all of your days in check? And starting slow and starting small, and reminding people that it's okay, that it's not all or nothing. It's not like, oh, you miss a day, you fail. It's, well, that's normal. You're a human and that's okay. And just continuously, reminding that it's a practice. It's not a perfection, but it's a practice. And once the nervous system starts to become used to being in that state, it realizes why this feels good. This feels great. Everything works here. Things happen here. Magic happens here. I feel good here. The world is affirming me here. And then when I'm over in this crazy state, it doesn't feel good. And I'm stressed and a lot of negative things happen. So then there's this huge contrast of seeing what feels great and works and what doesn't feel great and doesn't work. And then it becomes more obvious. Well, of course I'm going to have these non-negotiables in my life.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And as you're speaking, I'm just recognizing one other element I would add, which is the emotional work, because typically what drives somebody to be busy all the time is a deep unconscious buried level of little t trauma or big T trauma, but usually little t trauma of some level of unworthiness, guilt, shame. Like, I actually am not enough unless I'm busy all the time. And that takes some finessing to get at, but ultimately there is some driver, and it comes up if you sit still. Like, for a person who's constantly upregulated like that, if you challenge yourself just to sit down for 10 minutes, no devices, not even meditating, not talking to people, not with an agenda, not reading a book, just can you be with yourself for 10 minutes? You'll see all the voices that come up, all the stories that are buried, and really, really getting that these imprints that came from other sources in your childhood are running your life. Like, wow, okay. And it comes back to that vessel cleanup. I love the image that you brought in of the pipeline with hair. Like, right, we got to cough up the hairball of the crap that is not yours, because you're not even letting yourself get to know who you are. But here's the reason why I mentioned the altered states and the mystical states, because this represents that fundamental shift into the identity of Godification. And when like, our society is simply programmed so that all of us think that existence is about the ego using willpower and being productive to create results. And when that's all we've had for role models, and that's what we see everywhere in authority and leadership everywhere, that's normalized. But what you and I are talking about with Godification, or I often use the phrase joygasmic living, because for me, the joygasmic piece is the plugging into source, where it just feels like a great big joygasm because you're plugged into the source. Whatever we call it, opens up a completely different spectrum of possibilities. And when you're in the busy productivity mindset or paradigm, you can't even fathom the possibility. So you don't even know what to dream about, because you can't even access it. But once we open up the altered state, there's a new possibility that becomes available. And without that, it's very difficult to have the productivity, to have the desire to do the cleanup and work with the little t trauma. And like, why would you? It's way easier just to keep doing what brought you success and got you to this point. So it's a multifaceted evolutionary stage that we're navigating collectively. And there's so many angles. But anyway, what else does that spark for you?
Oh, it's so potent, Anne. It sparks a lot. It touches home really, really deeply. And when you were saying like the little t trauma of I'm not enough or I'm not worthy, for me personally, it was not that I'm not enough, but it was that there is not enough.
Yeah.
And it really stems down to, I wasn't breastfed as a child, and that has a lot of impacts on a child. And not being breastfed or not being held or nourished enough. And then also having parents that didn't have a lot of money, the scarcity of there is just not enough. And that comes in terms of, for me, it came up as love, it came up as finances, and it came up as time, because I was just a child that wanted to do everything, and I had to like not do some things because there weren't enough hours in a day. And that was really hard for me to accept. And so even now, when I have abundant love, abundant finances, and abundant time, there's still this little part of me freaking out that, oh my God, there's not enough time, there's not enough this, I need, there needs to be more, I need to do more, I need to have more, like, and that can actually pull me out of a meditation sometime, where my brain is screaming so loud, but no, but you can't, if you sit here right now, you're not going to be able to go do this, and and it's so interesting and powerful, because the only way to work with that and to confront that is to create the space to go in and to do that inner child work and like soothe. So it's a practice for me before even meditating or taking time off, is soothing that part of me and saying, hey, it's okay. Like, you can take a week off and the world is not going to die. Like it's going to be okay. And you're not going to die and you're still going to be fine. And it's, working with those energetics, and then giving myself that permission while in a soothed state I can take this time, and even positioning in that this time is actually going to make more space for more to come in. And
that's
so,
right.
But it's still, even though I've done work for years and years, sometimes that voice still comes up, and for me, that's where the anxiety can pop in or the overwhelm, because I want to do so much and there's all these limits of time and blah, blah, blah. And so it's fun to work with these energies and to identify what it is that's pulling at you, that's not allowing you to fully be in the space that you get to be in, to really tap into that joygasmic godification type of space.
That's right. Yeah, beautifully said. And it's just reminding me this of my own journey, because that was always the chronic issue for me too. Same thing. You could sit down in meditation, but there'd be the hook, like there's got to be something that has to be done, or I'm forgetting this, or, some level of not fully feeling completely safe and supported at the deepest existential child level to just relax and let this energy move through me in a different way. And so this last year has been really pivotal for me in that space, because I'm just coming off of taking a good 3 months completely off. And I'd never done that before. And just to watch and witness my own nervous system repatterning and reorganizing itself in these fundamental ways. Like, what is my fundamental relationship with time? I'm going to clean that up now. And there has to be the belief system and the energetics in place around money, abundance, time, everything to feel supported to do that. And it took me a long time to get to the place where I could just say, I am just going to wander the earth and fly and sit on rocks and explore what it is to be me as this node of consciousness that holds energy in a fresh way, right? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to build in 3 months off every year, and also never get to the place where I need 3 months off because I've upregulated. But the spaciousness of what can come through has been profound. So there's that addiction to time scarcity. That's a fundamental thing that nobody talks about because everyone's normalized it. Like, what do you mean? I'm busy. And it's so trendy to be say like, oh, I'm so busy. Like, right. Yeah. Socially acceptable insanity is how we roll here. What?
Oh, you're so right. You're such a lighthouse and a beacon of potential, just what's possible for people. And, I just love you. I love who you are and how you show up and how you be and what you bring forth. It's so important. It's just such medicinal magic. And I really want to recognize you and honor you for just how shiny and beautiful and amazing you are.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to let myself fully take that in. It's part of this identity shift, because typically in the past, historically, it'd be like, oh, thanks. All right. Yeah, you too. All right, we got to go by. And so the slowing down of like, oh, I'm going to receive is not something we have modeled either. So I wanted to just be in that space with you. Thank you, Sam.
Oh, yeah, you're so welcome. Easy and pleasurable.
Yeah, yummy, yummy, yummy. Well, let's do this again. We'll reconnect in some time and just touch base and see what else is emerging through you and how much pipeline clearing has unlocked more magic for you and for all of us and for everybody watching. Cough up the hairballs of your pipeline and let's let yourself receive the magic of the moment. It's all here.
Mm-hmm. This is so fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And we'll see you again soon. Lots of love.
Mwah.